The porch light snapped on with a dry click that sounded louder than it should have in the still night, and Evan froze at the bottom of the steps like a teenager caught past curfew, even though he was 32 and had lived in 3 different cities since the last time he stood in this exact spot. The maple tree beside the driveway swayed in the cold wind, leaves scratching across the pavement, and he shoved his hands deeper into the pockets of a jacket that wasn't warm enough for a Canadian October, telling himself he could still turn around, still walk back to the rental car, still drive to a hotel and pretend he had never come down this quiet street where every house looked settled and certain while he felt like a question mark with shoes on. The house looked smaller than he remembered, the paint a little more faded, the front steps slightly crooked, but the window beside the door still glowed the same soft yellow, and that light tugged at him harder than pride ever could. Inside, Margaret stood at the kitchen sink, rinsing a mug she had already washed once, her mind drifting the way it often did at night, back through years of packed lunches and school concerts and the hollow echo that followed after her only child moved out, and she didn't know why her chest suddenly tightened, why her heart began to beat like it was trying to catch up to something it had almost missed. Outside, Evan finally climbed the steps, each one creaking under his weight, each sound loud in his ears, and he remembered running up these same steps after baseball practice, slamming the door open, calling, "Mom, I'm starving," like the world had always been ready to feed him, like he had never imagined a day when he wouldn't know where he belonged. He lifted his hand to knock, hesitated, dropped it, exhaled hard, then tried again, because heartbreak had already taken enough from him this year and he refused to let fear take this too. The knock was soft, almost careful, like he was asking the house for permission. Margaret turned off the tap, water dripping in a slow rhythm, and stood still, head tilted, certain she had imagined the sound, until it came again, a little firmer this time, and something inside her whispered a name she hadn't said out loud in months. She dried her hands on a dish towel and walked toward the door, each step slow but sure, past the hallway photos of school pictures and birthdays and one graduation portrait where Evan smiled like the future was simple, and when she opened the door, the cold rushed in along with the sight of her son standing there with tired eyes, unshaven jaw, and a small, uncertain smile that broke her heart and healed it at the same time. For a second they only stared, both trying to fit the present over the past, both afraid that if they moved too fast the moment would shatter, and then Evan swallowed and said the words he had practiced the whole drive, voice rough but steady, "Mom, I want to come inside tonight." Margaret didn't ask why he was there so late, didn't ask about the woman she knew he had loved, didn't ask about the job he had once been so proud of, she simply stepped back and opened the door wider, because some questions can wait and some answers are already written in a person's eyes. As he crossed the threshold, the warmth wrapped around him, carrying the scent of tea and laundry soap and something sweet baking earlier that evening, and his shoulders dropped like he had been carrying an invisible weight for miles. Behind him, the wind rattled the leaves again, but the sound felt distant now, like a storm moving away, and when Margaret closed the door, the latch clicking into place, the house seemed to breathe differently, fuller somehow, as if it too had been waiting for this quiet, fragile return. The door shut behind Evan with a soft click, and the warmth of the house wrapped around him so quickly it almost made him dizzy, like stepping into a memory that still knew his name, while Margaret moved toward the kitchen without fuss, saying she would make tea. The way she always did when words were too heavy to carry right away, and he followed, eyes moving over the familiar walls, the old wooden clock ticking louder than he remembered, the row of framed photos along the hallway showing school plays, fishing trips, and one awkward middle school haircut he wished had never been captured, yet seeing it made his chest ache in a way that felt safe instead of sharp. He sat at the kitchen table, fingers tracing a faint scratch in the wood he had made years ago while building a model airplane, and the simple touch grounded him more than the long drive or the cold air ever could, while Margaret placed 2 mugs on the table, steam rising between them like a quiet bridge, and asked if he was hungry, not pushing, just offering, and he nodded because suddenly he was, not only for food but for the calm that lived in this room. He told her Chicago was loud and bright and full of chances, how the job had looked perfect on paper, how the apartment had tall windows and a view of trains sliding past at night, and how for a while he believed he had built the life he was supposed to want, until the days grew longer and the evenings grew quiet in the wrong way, and the person who once filled that silence with laughter slowly became a stranger standing across the same kitchen, both of them too tired to say what they were really feeling. Margaret listened with both hands around her mug, eyes steady, letting him lay the story out piece by piece without trying to solve it, and he spoke about Claire then, her love for rainy mornings and old bookstores, the way she believed every problem could be talked through if you stayed gentle, and how they had tried, truly tried, to bend toward each other without breaking, but sometimes love changes shape and no one is to blame, a truth that sounds mature yet still hurts like a fall on ice. He admitted the goodbye had been